Hi, I'm David with EV World News. We're talking about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. And today I have Bobby Primus from Oasis Amps visiting with us today. How's it going today, Bobby?
Excellent, Bill. Thanks for having me.
So, Bill is in Seattle and he's having
David.
connectivity issues. So, Bobby offered to fill in at the last
Mm,
moment so I could have a co host today, which I definitely appreciate him coming on. And he's a regular viewer. So, it just seemed very appropriate. He's in our EV space. And, I think you can add some good insights and it'll be a little different than when we have Bill on here. So,
Very cool.
anyway, I'm pleased to have you on here. So, we're going to start out today. We're going to talk about wireless charging of EVs. Now, this is a kind of a creative concept because most of us have it, not everybody, but most of us have probably used a wireless charger for our cell phones. Not everybody
Absolutely.
has them. Okay, not all cell phones take wireless charging. And by
Yeah.
the same token, I'm not sure that there's really any EVs made yet that are ready to that wireless charging, but I don't know that.
I'm losing your sound.
But so, this is kind of a unique concept. I know there's a highway in Florida being designed to do wireless charging as people drive down
Hmm.
it. But the latest one is a street in Los Angeles will be the first in California to wirelessly charge EVs. Now, the idea of this is, let's say you have a city transit bus that's electric, is
Okay.
that the bus may stop because it's got to be at that bus stop for say so many minutes because it's not
Right.
supposed to leave it till like 11:58 or something like that. So it'll sit
Yes, on
there,
schedule.
and while
Yeah.
it's sitting there, it's charging wirelessly from the charger there at the stop.
Yeah.
And of course, if you have that, you'd think, well, then all of a sudden cars will be stopped there all the time, blocking traffic, trying to get some free charging, right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm sure people find out a way to abuse any system, right? So,
Absolutely.
anyways, here's just sort of a concept image of this. Not sure how likely this really is, but it's trying to show like the bus pulling onto a spot on the pavement that would be wireless, but I would envision this as not being the whole road, but it would be just at the stops. I could be wrong. They could be trying to have it go all along the line. Trolleys have for a long time ran with an electric cable and they had something reaching up and connecting to the electric cable.
A lot of
Okay.
places in Europe has similar still to this day.
Right. And there's been
Yeah.
talk about trying to make it so buses could have that kind of connectivity. I'm not a big fan of that, but in this
Yeah.
particular case, this would be some way that the vehicle could charge. I wonder what that would do in a rainstorm. That just kind of makes you wonder how that would look. The bus is trying to charge and and it's wet and you fry all the people waiting at the bus stop. That probably wouldn't be a great idea. I'm sure there's some that'd be a Mike question.
Well, about a month or two ago, I put a video out on this issue because there were some concerns. Of course, you can adapt current vehicles to have a charging receiver to receive that. So you could just retrofit it.
Okay.
But then you could have and actually that would actually solve most of the problems of these cable thefts. And that was what my video was about. You have cable thefts at SuperChargers and EVgo and all of these places where you charge, and people cut these cables to get $15 worth of copper out of them. But you figure if there's 8 stations there, and you get, and each station, each charger has 2 cables, you've made $150 for what? 10 minutes worth of work cutting cables, throwing it in the trunk of your car. But each time you replace a cable, at the time when I made it, it was $2,000 to replace each one. So
But
that could very
that's a better
quickly
deal for
become.
the guy doing the theft than stealing air conditioning units.
Absolutely. So, I mean, in order to prevent that, if they went to in-ground wireless chargers, or I mean, you could do it a couple of ways. You could bring your own cable and plug in, and this way there's never a cable always there. But to do it wirelessly, because these cables and connectors, there's always a compatibility issue. Do I have CCS? Do I have this? But if you have a charger receiver and you pull over that thing, it'll charge your vehicle. Well, you're going to have some power loss, but then at the same time, you're putting out an EM field that people are concerned. It's like being around your microwave too much, right? All that power is coming up into the car and you're sitting over it. Right. So you'd have to kind of isolate that. So there's some pros and cons to this either way. And especially in a city bus, or the kilowatts that it would need to charge, you would have to look at the health risks also. Almost it seems like every time there's a solution, it brings a new problem.
The only thing I see as a challenge with this is, how do you have efficient transmission of electricity? I would think you'd have all kinds of electrical loss going
Yes,
from the pavement up into the vehicle.
the receiver. And you do but even with the cable, there's always transmission loss. You're going to get some type of attenuation. You're going to get power bleed coming through the cables. There's always loss between what the charger is putting out and what the car is receiving. And some of that is electronics on both sides. It's but I do think that, unless your receiver can physically adjust downward to meet the charging pad, you're going to have more losses if you have a gap. It seems to me like like you said, when you put your cell phone on a wireless charger, it's physically touching it. And if you have a case on your phone, that will also reduce the power transfer rate. So there's a lot of considerations that goes into it, even though it would be the simplest way. All you'd have to do is line up with that wireless charging pad and you're in business, if everything else was automatic on there. So it would be a great solution. Wow. Yeah, absolutely.
So here's a wireless charger. I couldn't keep it plugged in, but obviously it's sitting on there, and I have a fairly thick case on the back of this iPhone,
Makes a
and
difference.
but it still charges just fine on one of these. If you put it on the charging pad in a Tesla, it charges just fine, even with a fairly thick case.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That but that's a whole lot different than if I was a vehicle. It would look kind of like this. It'd be this big gap, and in reality it'd probably be more like this higher. Big of a gap. It's just this would be the size of the bus, right? So I'm curious how I'm just kind of curious how that works. I mean, now there's also talk about a high-speed EV charging highway in Indiana, and I know there's something going on in Florida, and it's just like I said, what's happening when it's raining, what's happening when it's there's all these things. Of course, I do a show on electric vehicles. I keep realizing that there's so much about electricity I just don't understand. And it makes it fun to have Mike on Wednesdays, when he's got a much better handle on it as an engineer, but still there's just a lot there's a lot going on here.
I've always done low voltage with my IT background. Computers and stuff is low voltage. I try to stay away from high voltage stuff, but like you said, if that charging pad is just sitting there, let's say at a Tesla location, and somebody steps on it in the rain, I don't know, but I've heard people talking about, well, it's like an induction stove. Until you put something on it, there's no current going through it, right? You have to put the metal pot on it. So I guess they're working on it, and they're roughhousing it at this point, but I think it could be perfected to be a great idea if done correctly.
According to UCLA, installing inductive charging can be cost competitive with standard EV chargers, though the first pilot installations, of course, cost more. The basic process fairly simple. When the road's due for resurfacing and the top layer is removed, thin charging coils can be added and connected to electricity. From then on, the electric vehicle receptor has to be added that can communicate with the charging coils to suck up power.
Absolutely. And so if both of those would adjust up and down just a little, to put them in closer proximity, and at the same time, you put a shield around them to contain any EM field around it. It seemed like you could make it a safe proposition.
So,
You know,
the final design may be around 3/4 of a mile long, with clusters of charging coils at certain locations along the road. It can help make here's something. Driving along a mile-long stretch of the charging tech can typically add 10 miles of range to a vehicle. That's a pretty good stretch.
yeah,
Now the thing is that drive down 1 mile, is that at 60 miles per
miles an
hour,
hour.
or is
Yeah,
that at 15 miles per hour, so you're
never
over
know.
for 4 minutes? I mean, because when I think of driving 1 mile, I'm thinking about driving it in, say, 1 minute, right?
1 minute. Yeah.
And that would be a lot of miles to add in 1 minute. Now,
Yes.
there is charging here, those 800-volt chargers, which are fairly non-existent, but the technology exists. They add 40 miles per minute if
Yeah.
you have a
Wow.
car that can hook up to it
Yeah.
at a charger. So 10 miles in 1 minute isn't out of the question by any stretch,
Right.
if this is really as effective as a charging cable would be. I think 10 miles in 1 minute is probably more the norm. I mean, you think about if you were trying to add 200 miles of range in 20 minutes, going from 10% to 80%, that's
Yeah.
probably, a lot of cars, that's about right. So, but this is more talking about a bus.
Wow.
And so for a bus, that's a whole lot more kilowatts. You got to get up into the bus, but the bus, obviously the sensors would be covering, the battery
Yeah, the
pack would be
receipt, you could
larger.
have more sequential sensors throughout the bottom of the bus. It will be longer than just one or two places on
Right.
on a car. But
One
just
of the,
imagine though, most of these EVs have, solid bottoms where the batteries are. So
right.
imagine if all of that surface now was part of the receiver, right? Instead of just one like square
Just one
that you would
plug.
have in the front under the engine bay, you would have the whole bottom of it, and then now you can actually stream power to more inputs on that vehicle. It seems.
It would seem, I've always been surprised that you don't see charging ports on both sides of a car. So that when
Yes.
you were pulling up, if all the charging bays weren't used, you weren't charging
Yeah.
two chargers at the same time.
But then you would have to have a split the way you would DC charge those batteries. You would have to seems like you would have to split the pack from both ends instead of
Mm-hmm.
charging from front to back. You'd be cut that battery in half and do from front to back to the middle. And it seems like that will be more efficient. But I think the way they have it now, it would be more difficult to plug in that higher capacity. Yeah, it's just
I know
the
that's been
engineering.
a talk on like the Cybertrucks, or I'm sorry, not the Cybertrucks, but the Tesla semis, is having it charge on both sides. But
Yes.
I've always wondered,
Yes.
there must be a reason, because every car manufacturer would be doing this. It's not like it's my bright idea, right? There's been, I'm sure,
Yeah,
100,000 other people thought the same thing and had the same question. But it would seem like a viable thing to have it,
absolutely.
charge twice as fast by
Twice
plugging
as
in on both
fast.
sides. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why couldn't you charge multiple batteries? I know one of the things, if you go to a Tesla charger bank and there's more than one cord on the same one, it's polite to go to a different one
Yeah.
if there's
Yeah.
space, because
Right.
if you're all in the same one, you end up charging slower.
Yes,
And
because you're coming off the same distribution unit. So
right,
usually you're powering two chargers, maybe have four heads, and then you're sharing that power. So like if you go to a Tesla A, you don't want to be Tesla B. You want to go to another Tesla A. It's coming off of a different unit, and you'll get the full power.
right. Yeah. So I'm just saying you'd have to hit multiple ones, but this seems like, from what we're talking about, there'd be more points of transferring the power, so we get a little bit more juice in the vehicle. All right, I wanted to move on. Something I really found fascinating, because I've seen studies. Now, this was the Tesla studies are worldwide, based on all showing how safe Tesla vehicles are. But a recent study came out that said Tesla has the highest fatal accident rate of all auto brands. And
Wow.
this is based just on the United States. Okay.
Now, is this in
And
safe driving mode or just in general?
this is just in general.
Wow,
Yeah, Tesla
that's
shows
surprising.
their self-driving is incredibly safe compared to human driving. Um, but Tesla vehicles have a fatal crash rate of 5.6 per billion miles driven. Kia is second with a rate of 5.5. Buick is next with 4.8. But the average for all cars in the US is 2.8, which is exactly half of the Tesla rate.
Wow.
Yeah, and they broke it down for individual models. The Model S is slightly more than 5.6 at 5.8, but the
Hmm.
Model Y is at 10.6. It's like 4 times the average. And now, but it's also rated as being the safest vehicle made.
Uh, how is that?
Yeah,
Then
so
that just it just don't sound. So wait, so the Model S has the worst. Is it because of its speed? Is it
the
people?
S was not the worst. The Y is the worst.
The Y is the worst.
The S was worse than the average. I think the Model 3 doesn't brings the numbers down, and the Model X,
Mm,
but the Model Y really brings it up. And the Model Y ranks as the sixth worst vehicle overall for fatalities. Something called the Hyundai Venue has a rate of 13.9. I've never heard of the Hyundai Venue. It
me
sounds like
either.
that would be like a minivan or something like that.
It
But
does.
anyways, but the Model Y has the worst for Tesla, yet at the same time, um, the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety named the 24 Model Y as the top safety pick award winner. And because it's generally safest for its own passengers. And we've seen some horrific accidents that Teslas have been in. I've seen ones from the Cybertruck, the Model Y, and the Model 3, and the occupants all survived.
Yeah.
And
So these
ones that,
deaths are other occupants or bystanders or whatever,
yeah.
not for the.
Now, I'll give you an example. A Tesla Model Y Performance, while it's a crossover, SUV, it
Mhm.
has 20 more horsepower than a Lamborghini Urus, which is
Wow.
a supercar SUV.
Yeah.
It the Lamborghini has 650 horsepower versus the Tesla 670. Okay,
Wow. Yeah.
um, that probably has a lot to do with it. There is an
Yeah.
incredible
Absolutely.
urge when you drive a Tesla to drive it fast, and I
To
know that
punch it.
Hertz rental cars had
Hmm.
the terrible accident rates with Teslas,
Yeah.
and people didn't know how to drive them. And the fact that people were in a car that was so fast,
Hmm.
they didn't really know what to do. And I think there's a couple things. The cars brake really quickly, they slow down
Hmm.
really quickly, and they
Hmm.
accelerate ridiculously quickly.
Yeah.
And I think it's a change in driving styles. Now, most of the time, I would assume when there's a fatality or when I see a bad accident somewhere, it's usually because somebody blew a red light.
Yes.
And so that always kind of makes me wonder, and are these people driving under the influence of drugs or alcohol?
Mhm.
I've seen other theories, are they fiddling with the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one thing that's a little distracting. Instead of having most of your information in front of
Right in
you,
front of you.
it's over here to the right on this enormous screen, and you control stuff with this screen, but it's Tesla seems to think this is a
And
good idea.
I would think that Tesla has all the detailed data to give us more specific answers. Were these vehicles being rented at the time? Was this person's first time driving? And I know my first time driving a Tesla, I got on the highway. Before I left the driveway, I thought ice cars was always a stupid idea. This Tesla was so smooth and so powerful. Ice cars should have never been the standard. They was building electric cars way back. If they had a
Mhm.
stayed on them like they did anyway, I got on the highway, and at the time, some Corvettes was passing me. A couple of Corvettes and some motorcycles. They just shot by us, and I said, "Well, I'm gonna see if I could keep up with them because I've never been in a Tesla before."
Hmm.
I hit the accelerator, and I'm keeping up with these guys. I look down, I'm doing over 80 miles an hour and didn't know it because there's no screen in front of you telling you how fast you're going. It's over
Right.
to the side, you know.
Yeah.
And so I could
It,
very easily seeing that, not realizing that you're speeding, that then things happen because you're now keeping up with them. And those guys could, they were trying to leave me and they couldn't. And I really wasn't pressing hard on it. So I'd like to know the data behind this. What was the circumstances of these wrecks that will cause this? Because the car in of itself is very safe.
yeah. That's there. There's been like we did that video on the one Model Y in China where the lady had 3 passengers and she managed to take the Model Y airborne in traffic, like
Wow,
at a
wow.
stop sign. She hit somebody or something or a
It
curb,
went
and
airborne.
she must have driven up the back of another car and flipped the car several times in the air, and it bounced off of a couple of cars off their roofs, and then it landed
Wow.
on 4 wheels, and everybody in her car was fine.
Wow.
A couple of people were bleeding. A couple of people
Yeah,
were
but
bleeding,
still.
but I mean, they weren't like paralyzed or,
Yeah. Yeah.
all
Once
that
you're
bad.
airborne, you're looking at death or major injuries.
Yeah, I'm
Wow.
just saying, for Teslas to have these people dying. I mean, they had the case of the doctor in California with his 3 family members that tried to end his life, and he drove off a
Yeah.
cliff. They fell
Yeah.
150 feet, and everybody survived. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like,
It's a safe vehicle.
yeah. There was another one recently where somebody was driving a Cybertruck at about 80 miles per hour and went through a tree,
Wow.
and the the front of the vehicle completely crumbled. The 4 people inside were pretty much fine,
Yeah.
and they should not have survived that accident.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but they did. And there's so many cases of people having amazing survivability in these vehicles that it really makes me wonder: are these drivers drunk?
Yeah.
Are they just not paying attention?
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I know people who use the self-driving and
Hmm.
like read books while they're driving their Teslas.
Yeah.
So I know people do different driving behaviors, but some of that's because of the full self-driving beta. They're not
Yeah.
really on it fully. They're
There
supposed to
yet.
touch the steering wheel every so often
So
and look up,
often.
and
Yeah.
there's different things that people will do to kind of fake that thing out so that
Absolutely.
they can
Always
keep
a way
kind of
around
doing
it.
their own thing.
Yeah.
And because, to be fair, the full self-driving shows it's like 20 times as safe as a normal driver, and so it does make a bit of a difference. Anyways,
But
well,
I wonder how that's going to be without the lidar or any kind of radar because cameras can't see through fog or rain pretty much.
mhm.
They're very easily confused. So it seems like since they remove the lidar and other sensors, and you're just strictly going on cameras, it just seems like in sunny weather or clear night it seems fine, but any abnormality could seem to cause problems with just camera based sensors only, it seems.
Was that what they're doing now with just cameras now?
I think Tesla disabled most of their lidar, and that may not be the latest thing, but the last I saw, they're just doing full cameras,
Hmm.
which is problematic, it seems.
Yeah, I'm
And,
not aware on that topic. All right,
yeah.
let's move on, and I want to talk a little bit about battery technology. One of the things we get a lot of hate on EVs because of battery fires, different things. But there's other technologies other than just straight lithium-ion batteries.
Mhm.
Cattle, or CATL. I get a little
Yeah.
bit of hate occasionally
Mhm.
because I like to call them cattle. In
Cattle.
Nebraska, we call them cattle. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Anyways, so CATL, which is a giant Chinese battery manufacturer, says it's going to put its second generation sodium ion batteries into production in 2025. Now, the sodium ion battery can't catch on fire, but it holds slightly less energy
So
than
kilogram.
lithium ion or LFP batteries.
Yeah.
Now, you've got a mix right now. You've got a mix of lithium ion and LFP out in most of your EVs. And this is going to be something that's come out new. The CEO of Cattle, Robin Zing, said the company has 20,000 people doing research and development work. How many other
Mhm.
companies can make a claim like that? Mike and I talk
Yeah.
about this a lot on the Wednesday episode. We see people announcing what they say are game breaking technologies,
Yeah. Game
1,000-mile
changers.
batteries that
Yeah.
charge in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
God knows what all some of these claims are, but they're usually by companies that don't seem like they're well funded.
Yeah.
And it's a challenge. But when I see like LG Electronics, Cattle,
Mhm.
Tesla,
Panasonic has
BYD,
some.
yeah,
Mhm.
Panasonic, when they're talking about we've got this technology and we're bringing it to market in the next 2 years,
Mhm.
I'd say that's happening.
Yeah.
Okay. Some of these others we see, um, everything from like the NASA Sabre battery, solid state battery, they're thinking might be good for space flight.
Mhm.
I just don't know.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see there was some recent arguing between or where Robin Jing from Cattle was saying that Musk doesn't know what he's talking about with some of the battery technology that
Mhm.
Musk is trying to put money into, and maybe he does, maybe he doesn't, who knows.
Yeah.
um, but it's interesting kind of to see. But Cattle recently announced a second generation sodium battery at the World of Young Scientists Summit. Their chief scientist Wu Kai revealed the development of the battery so that it would be launched in 2025. They're already manufacturing sodium ion batteries and is using them in its Freevoy battery pack, along with its traditional lithium ion cells. The Freevoy battery is engineered specifically for use in so-called extended range EVs. It's
Mhm.
The Freevoy is the world's first hybrid vehicle battery with a range of 400 kilometers and something called 4C super fast charging. I don't know what 4C is,
Yeah.
but it's a battery for hybrids with
Mhm.
400-mile range or 400-kilometer range. 400 kilometers would be
Wonderful.
about 240 miles. That's a long range to put on a plug-in hybrid.
Yeah.
But
I,
let's
QuantumScape was doing something similar. I think BMW, if I remember correctly, and maybe Stellantis, who had invested in them. They're doing real world testing with their solid state battery. But I think that the technology is going to. I think there's going to be a hybrid mixture of those batteries before they become full solid state to get the benefits of both. You'll have, iron lithium mixed with some type of solid state batteries to
Mhm.
get the fast charging of one and then the energy density of the other, so that it's fully electric, but you're getting the best of both worlds, including cold weather performance of solid state batteries is supposed to be better depending on the solid state you're looking at. So I as the market evolves with anything that has to do with tech and digital, you always get new advancements and the prices always come down.
Right.
And that's why ICE engines is dinosaurs. And then, people want to go to combustion this and new combustion. If it burns anything, it's dead, because it can't compete. The price of building a 2,000 part combustion engine compared to a 10-part total electric motor with the transmission built in, you that's never going to be as expensive as to build a automatic transmission with 8 gears and a 2,000 part. And so those prices, the EV prices, are going to continue to drop, like the Chevrolet Equinox. That 2025 get 319 miles of range now. That's the average, and the price of what the federal rebate is $28,000. Almost anybody can afford that. And with that amount of range, you can not have a home charger and drive that vehicle all week. And when you go supermarket shopping or go to a restaurant, you could plug that car in while you're eating dinner. You know,
Right.
and so with these prices coming down in these batteries, the next significant battery evolution to the market is going to be the end of ICE altogether, I think.
Oh, I think, I've been in this space as far as doing the news with Bill for less than a year and a half. And
Mhm.
I've been in the EV space for about 3 years. And I've seen so much doing the news that I really didn't realize was going on. There's so many things in terms of charging technology, battery technology, um, things. So that right now, the cars aren't designed for the current best practice in charging
Yes.
tech. But like I was telling you, there's chargers out there that can charge a car 40 miles every minute. Okay. So, do you need to stop at a charger and put in 400 miles of range? No, your max is probably about 200 miles you can go before you have to stop and go to the bathroom anyways, right?
Right.
So a 5-minute stop, that's not very far. Now, you're going to be limited. So like when you're pulling up at an interstate exit, you got to decide, which for gas, you have 4 or 5 gas stations to choose from. You have several restaurants, things like that. Whereas with charging technology, you have to put it in an app and it navigates you to your next charger, and you kind of plan your route along these charging stations. So you take a little bit of time, maybe farther to go out of your way to go to the charging station than you might otherwise if you were driving with gas. But the thing is that fast charging is there. You're going to be charging hopefully cheaper. It's supercharging isn't a whole lot cheaper than gasoline. It is still cheaper, but not a lot cheaper. In some places, it's just as expensive, particularly in the UK. And in fact, in the UK, it may even be worse. So there are some exceptions with this, but normally you're going to have a full charge from home anyways, right? Where your electricity is cheaper. But in the case of these sodium ion batteries, CATL is saying they're not as affected, that they're good as low as minus 40 Celsius, and which is the same as negative 40 Fahrenheit. But anyways, just saying that the sodium ion batteries are probably going to be significantly better for cold weather driving. People always freak out about all those Hertz rental cars that had problems last winter at Tesla superchargers, and some of the chargers were down, and there was some problems. That was a huge story. I don't know if you remember that from last winter, but anyways, and the sodium ion batteries have a much lower chance of being involved in some type of fire, and that is a big deal. Now, by the weight, the energy density is only 200 watt hours per kilogram, whereas the best lithium ion batteries currently are 300 watt hours per kilogram. So the current lithium ion batteries for the weight can carry 50% more juice. Okay. So that's going to affect the ranges, but we'll see. I'm betting these sodium ion batteries are going to be cheaper yet too.
And that's why I think at first it's going to be a hybrid mix, because you're going to get the range from the ion, but you're going to get the fast recharge. But then the architecture of the vehicle is going to have to change. They're going to need to go to 400. Now, some people are saying 800. And now I think, was it Honda was saying 1200 amps architecture in the vehicle to allow these fast chargers to be more efficient at charging the vehicles. You'd have to change a lot of your subsystems to handle that kind of power throughput, it seems.
Oh, there's no question. Currently, well, my next topic is actually on the Tesla's new supercharger hardware, and it's the new version 4. The supercharger cabinet sees a max charge go from 250 kilowatts to 500 kilowatts.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah, the Cybertruck will be the only Tesla to be able to benefit from the upgrade. Now, when I talk about those 800 volt chargers that Gravity supercharging is making, the Cybertruck is the only Tesla that can take that. But there's some Hyundais that can take it. So a lot of the Hyundai line for 24 already was equipped to take that higher architecture. The Porsche Taycan it can take it. But for 25, there's going to be something like about 20 cars that can take it. So a lot of the car manufacturers.
I wonder how that's going to do with the longevity of the battery pack itself, though.
Like
They're
that
now
might be too
saying that
harsh.
fast charging. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, you mean because it's charging so much faster?
Yeah, you got a lot of power going through there. You're gonna have
Mm-hmm.
heating problems. You can't push that much power without you're gonna have you're generating a lot of heat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what's going to be the degradation of the battery pack over the life? Teslas right now, even supercharging, they find that it really don't degrade the power or the longevity of the battery pack itself. But once you start getting up into these higher ranges, I wonder what the longevity of the power packs is going to be.
Well, there's probably something to that, and I guess
Mhm.
only time will tell. But the
So
other thing
yeah,
is, how often are people really going to be using that tech?
yeah, right. Yeah,
Okay, maybe if you are a taxi driver, maybe
yeah,
you're going to be going and using the superchargers all the time. I mean, the normal person is probably not going to the superchargers all that
a
often.
lot. Right. I agree.
Yeah, so it's going to affect a limited number of people, but Tesla's supercharging network is definitely the leader in the industry.
So, David,
I
let me ask
honestly
you.
go ahead.
You were talking earlier about how much it costs to supercharge. Do you think as chargers, not just Teslas, but chargers in general, become more prevalent, as they become more common, will they be more like gas stations and you're right across the street from me and now I have to drop my price because your price is lower?
It'd be interesting to see if all of a sudden charging networks have the signs up saying, "Hey, we're
This is
only
my
30
price.
cents a kilowatt."
Yeah.
Yeah, versus because a lot of the places, so like where Bill and I live in Nebraska, electricity at home is like 12 cents a kilowatt hour.
Wow.
Okay, it's really cheap here.
Is that
Now,
24 hours or does it drop
yeah,
after 10 p.m.? That's
there's
24
no
hours.
cheap time. There's no
There's no
cheap
cheap
time.
time.
Yeah, it's
Gotcha.
not like Nevada where you can charge your car for free after 11 at night.
Yeah.
Because they have too
Yeah.
much power at night because of
Night.
wind,
Yeah.
power. They have to sell that wind power somewhere. Anyways, it's I don't know. That's an interesting kind of thought. In my mind, I see where superchargers for Tesla, they're at destination locations.
Right.
So almost all of your superchargers are in a supermarket parking lot
Hmm.
with restaurants around.
Right.
Okay, so it's not your traditional. Like I'm a fan of in the Midwest. We have a chain called Quick Trip. You're in Florida. You have
Hmm.
Wawa.
Hmm.
Um, they're pretty they're both similar where they even have like healthy options for food and
Hmm.
things like that, which is not your traditional like gas, cigarettes, booze, lottery
Hmm.
tickets kind of gas
Right.
station. So you have some options there, but I haven't seen any Quick Trips putting in charging stations yet. Okay,
I think
but
Circle K just signed Circle. You have Circle K's where you are? 7-Eleven Circle K's?
I'm pretty sure we do somewhere. They they've been doing a big initiative
Big
to put
initiative on
in
that.
um,
Yeah,
electric charging stations. I'm not
absolutely.
sure what to think. So here's kind of my deal. Tesla has the most reliable network, right?
Of course.
And this
Hands
is part of
down.
what your idea of what you're doing with Oasis amps is you're
Hmm.
providing a plan B for people who go to a charger and the charger doesn't work, right?
Hmm.
And
Or you're
um,
out in the wilderness and there is no charges around you, but there's
yeah,
residents. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, you've got a great idea there for filling a niche for people who are unsuccessful at charging somewhere else. But
Mhm.
the Tesla network tends to work. Okay.
Always. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas the other companies haven't quite figured it out. And I don't know if this is just because Tesla's got the money to make sure things work and the other
Yeah.
companies are always hurting for money. I know when I had opportunities to purchase superchargers at a discount and sell them to charging companies, no charging
Hmm.
companies had any money.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
even though I could sell them some superchargers for like $25,000 or less, when
Hmm.
they're normally 75,000 or more,
Yeah.
nobody had any money to buy them.
Wow.
So, I mean,
That
a lot
makes a
of them
difference.
missed the boat. I mean, they could have picked up a
Yeah.
couple hundred of these things and saved millions.
Absolutely. It
So,
seems like the government should have bought those things at that price and then had them sold to contractors that was installing under the
Nevi.
yeah, on the Navy.
Yeah, I mean, it would make a lot of
Yeah.
sense. When you have all this money allocated for the Nevi project, in the
Yeah.
billions of dollars, and they barely put in any charging stations, and an opportunity comes up to grab 200 charging stations for
Yeah. Yeah.
a third the normal price.
Yeah.
You'd have thought somebody
Crazy.
could have like, hey, let's write a check.
Snap 'em up. Yeah.
Let's get that, and we'll have those, and we'll find contractors to go install those. It's like, no,
Mhm. No.
no.
Yeah.
Forget the government saving a buck, right?
Yeah.
It always,
They're
you
not
know,
into saving money business.
no, they're
Because when
not
you
in
get
the
into those
saving money
collecting
business.
taxes, you don't have any incentive to save money. The money's coming in regardless. So why save it? It's not like your
No,
household where the money's coming in is limited. So you got to be careful what you're spending.
the government seems to
Mhm.
have no concern over whether or not
Yeah.
they, spend our tax money in a,
Mhm.
I don't know, what is the term with due diligence?
Due
You
diligence. Yeah.
know, I don't know. It's astounding sometimes to see some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Anyways, but this these new chargers, the new cabinets dubbed the V4 cabinet, sports charging in vehicles with battery packs rated between 400 volts and 1,000 volts. That's great news for owners of EVs with 800-volt architecture. That's what I was just talking about with the
Mhm.
gravity chargers. Okay.
Absolutely.
So a growing list that now includes the Audi e-tron, the
Mm.
Genesis, Hyundai, and
Mhm.
Kia vehicles. Of course, that's all one
Yeah.
family.
Wow.
Porsche and Lucid, GM pickup trucks,
Wow.
and the Tesla supercharger. Now, I'm assuming that Tesla will very soon start making their other cars on this. Because the
Yeah.
current, the 3, the Y, the X, and the S max out at 250 volts. So the
Yeah.
only Tesla that can handle it is the Cybertruck. It's designed to support 8 supercharger stalls, which is double the number of the current cabinet that the
Wow.
V3 supplies electricity to. The things with this, though, and I talked to utility companies about this, is you still got to make sure you have all the transformers, everything in place to be able to provide that load if there's that many vehicles charging at that particular charging location.
But
But
I saw I don't know if you've ever seen Kyle's out of spec review. He
I,
does EVs and road testing and stuff like that.
Mhm.
He installed, someone gave him a charger for, he's just got millions of views. But he has a hybrid system that do DC fast charging. He
Mhm.
has his batteries, I think it's like a 200 kilowatt battery that supplements the level 2 battery that will charge at uh, DC fast charging power output.
Mhm.
And it seems like if you had a generator supplementing that, you wouldn't have to get all of this external power from the grid, right? You have trickle power coming in from the grid. You're charging your battery pack, and you're charging a car off the grid also. But then if you need to fast charge or charge more than one vehicle, you can have a generator there that would kick in and supplement both. So you
Right.
have 3 sources of power putting out what the grid needs and try to eliminate that whole, I got to run dedicated uh, 240 volt or what's this phase 3? I forget what phase 3 is. Power to that installation in order to get level 3 charging. So I think there's going to be more hybrid systems that will get these places installed, even in locations where you only have electricity.
Well,
Um,
I think part of it is you also you have solar and batteries, like you were talking
yeah,
about. I
yeah,
don't know about so much about the generator situation, but if you have the battery storage, the
yeah.
chargers aren't being used all the time, so the
Uh-huh.
battery is always being topped up.
Charged up. Yeah.
You're able to save the grid. We've had a lot of discussions about this, like Australia is asking. Australia is starting to figure out the V2G model, which
Mhm.
is vehicle to grid, which is
Mhm.
basically using, for those of you who are listening and don't know what this is, it's taking the batteries on the vehicles and using them to supplement the grid, as opposed to the other way around. People always think that EVs are taking all the power, but EVs really for daily driving don't use a whole lot of the battery. They only use
Right.
a small part of it. And you can take them and you can plug them back in at the house. And if you have one that has bidirectional charging, or you have a charger that's set up to be bidirectional, you can power the house from these vehicles. And they're talking about helping get through the Australian summer with helping with like air conditioning loads and stuff like that by having the power come from the EVs and people using the cars to supplement the grid when the grid's being taxed the most. And that's kind of one of the, it wasn't really an intentional part of
Mhm.
electric vehicle design. It's just one of the huge benefits that comes from this. And we see this even like with major school bus fleets. You
Mhm.
have 1,000 buses at some city that are sitting there with their enormous battery packs,
Mhm.
and they can help in terms of if there was some power outage or brownout, that the buses could probably, 1,000 buses might power 100,000, or not 100,000. Let's say they power 10,000 homes.
Mhm.
And it's just crazy to think about how much juice I can put out. Well, Bobby, that's really all we've got to cover for today. And I
Okay.
want to thank you for filling in for Bill on short notice. That was, he's out in Seattle. I don't know what went on there, but he has power. He just doesn't have. He lost internet. So, anyways,
Mhm.
makes things a challenge. Folks, we want to thank y'all
Anytime.
for. Yeah, folks, we want to
Anytime.
thank y'all for watching today, and I'll hopefully be back with Bill on Tuesday. Otherwise, y'all have a great weekend.